We're continuing our march through Mark's Gospel. 2.5 years we're going to spend looking at Jesus and how he interacts with people. And talking of people, there are 6 people here on the screen. I want you to tell me who they are, please. So we go with the top left first. Who is that? Simon Cowell. Why did you say it like that? Simon Cowell. Okay, we've said it. Move on. Who's the one in the middle at the top? Macaulay Culkin. That's correct, Macaulay Culkin. Do you remember he's the one on Home Alone, the cute little boy? Did you know that every year somebody puts out fake news on the internet that he's died? Every year. They say Macaulay Culkin has died of X, Y and Z with this picture, and it's always fake. That's the way some people are wired. How about the person in the top right-hand side there? Who's that? Gandhi. That's right, that's Gandhi. That was Gandhi when he was a lawyer in South Africa, before he did many magnificent things to bring about justice in the world. How about the bottom left lady there? The Queen. Trump wouldn't have known, would he? Because she was always behind him. Unbelievable, honestly. And who's the guy in the middle bottom there? No, not Charlie Chaplin. I reckon at least 70% of you have watched a film by this guy. What's that? Yeah, that's right. Not David Hitchcock, our operations minister. This is Alfred Hitchcock. Oh, yeah, that's him when he was young. How about the bottom right lady there? Who's that? Pam. Why did you say that in the same tone as Simon Cowell? That's not very kind, is it, really? Pam Bates, that's our mayor for this year, a lady who has been working with us in this community for many years. 3 men got together in 1974, 2 artists and an architect, and they were looking through a magazine in a coffee shop, and they realised that a certain style of Cadillac that they'd been told would last forever in America and would always be made, it was made in the 60s, had stopped being made, that it was now not needed, that it was faded. So they decided that they would build what they called the Cadillac Ranch. And they would bury these Cadillacs with the tail fins that were no longer being made and any other Cadillacs in their ranch, and people could come in and just graffiti them and paint them. They are all put in, we're told, at the angle of the Great Pyramid in Giza in Egypt. Another thing that we were told would never fade, that we would always know why it was there. And these men wanted to show, hey guys, everything fades. Those things you think will last forever. No, there are. Who's that guy with the Alfred Hitchcock? Oh, and Gandhi. Everything. Everyone fades and finishes and ends. Have you walked through that graveyard and you look at the names? Some of them now faded, you can barely see them. How many are not remembered now? I remember my mum going to try and find her great-grandmother's graveyard down in Rust Hall, overgrown with brambles, where time had just gone by. Everything fades, apart from Jesus. In the reading that we just had read to us, they're in Caesarea Philippi and the surrounding villages, and from this area you can see back to Galilee where it all started with Jesus, and forwards to Jerusalem where it's all going to end with Jesus. They can see back the disciples to where they first heard Jesus tell those stories that they didn't quite understand but excited them. They can remember when Jesus walked along the lakeside and said, drop your nets and follow me. When he came across a tax collector and said, stop your corrupt business and put the coins down and follow me. And they can remember those great things that Jesus has done over the last few years together. And then they look forward to Jerusalem where Jesus is making them go, even though they know that trouble will happen in Jerusalem. And whilst they're in this place in the surrounding villages of Caesarea Philippi with the past behind them and the future in front of them, Jesus says, hey guys, what's everyone making of this? Who do they say I am? And the disciples respond and they say, well, they say you're one of the prophets. Because Jesus was like the prophets of the Old Testament. The prophets of the Old Testament stood up for justice. They rallied against the religious and the political leaders who were only in it for themselves and couldn't give two hoots about the everyday man and woman. They think you're like Elijah or one of the other prophets, they said. And who do you say I am? Said Jesus. I hear in my imagination the shuffling of feet, the clearing of throats, the hoping as they don't make eye contact with Jesus that one of them will speak up. And it's Peter, the leader, the spokesman, the arrogant one at times. You are the Christ. When I was a kid, I thought Christ was Jesus' surname. Neil Durling, Jesus Christ. But it's not. Christ means Messiah. A Messiah is somebody who is anointed for a specific task. In the Old Testament, priests were anointed for the specific task of reminding the people that God loved them and stay close to God. When I was at Longmead Junior School, I was anointed as the milk monitor. It was my task to make sure that every child in break time, when Mrs. Fraser read a story to us, got their milk in their bottles with their straws. I was the milk messiah. They didn't call me that back then, and I want to go back now and just clarify it. But that was the task I was anointed for. Neil, make sure they've all got milk. Yes, I'll do it. And Jesus was anointed for a specific task. His task was to throw off the shackles of religion. His task was to say no more to trying to live like the other countries and peoples around us. And his task, most importantly, was to draw all of creation, including humanity, back to the God who loves us. And as humans, we can reject that love and say, no, I don't want in, I want out. But Jesus came to give us all that opportunity to come back to him. After Peter had got it right, if he was at a local infant school, he would be given a silver star and he would have something written in his reading book taken home to mummy and daddy so that they can congratulate him. But Jesus' response is quite odd, it seems, at first reading. Jesus warned them not to tell anyone. Warned is stern here. It's not telling someone off because they've not done anything wrong, but it is saying, hey, listen up, as many of you did just then. Don't tell anyone. Why? But why not tell anyone, Jesus? If this is what you've come for, shouldn't we get pamphlets out there, start a channel on TV, do all those kinds of things? No, don't tell anyone. Why? It might be that Jesus felt his time wasn't quite yet. It might be that Jesus said, I don't want to be famous. I think it's this, that Jesus knew that they didn't really understand who Jesus was. That they didn't really understand what Messiah meant, because they were looking for a leader who would come and push out the Romans who were occupying them, and to do that you would have to use military force. So Jesus, let's sharpen some swords, let's get some spears, and let's kick the Romans out. And Jesus is saying, that's not my way. Think back to the story before this one, where Jesus heals a man who is blind. Jesus prays for him, and he says, how are you? And he says, well, I can kind of see people. They're walking around, but they look like trees. So Jesus goes again and he prays for him, and then the guy can see clearly. I think that story is a preamble to this story. That it is pointing to the truth that they didn't see Jesus clearly. That Jesus as Messiah to them was kind of like trees. I don't know about you, but I take great comfort that when the disciples don't get it completely correct, Jesus still lets them follow him. He doesn't say, sorry, you've got it wrong, sorry, you've not got it 100%, you're out. He says, come, follow me. In the next passage, after this one, Jesus tells them how he's going to die. And Peter says, no, it's not going to happen that way, Jesus. And Jesus says, yes, it is. So who is the Christ? This writer, Walter Bergen, says, in a foxhole, Jesus is in a rescue squad. In a dentist chair, a painkiller. On exam day, a problem solver. Oh, yeah. In an affluent society, a clean-shaven, middle-of-the-roader. For a Central American guerrilla, a bearded revolutionary. All these books here that I've brought in from my study, all of these are about Jesus. I mean, I've got other books that have Jesus in them as well, but these ones are just about Jesus. There must be 100 books here. There are more books written in the world about Jesus than about anybody else. And there are so many conflicting ideas. There are so many ways in which we can get confused, because at the end of the day, maybe Blaise Pascal was right. Blaise Pascal said that God created man in his own image and man returns the favour. And so we project onto Jesus what we feel comfortable with and what we think he should be. I wonder when Gareth Southgate up there is going to get sacked. I wonder when he gets sacked, because he's not had a very good win record in the World Cup, has he? Played 7, won 3, drawn 2, lost 2, I think, something like that. I mean, that's not a good record. I wonder what will happen when he gets sacked. I watched with my son Noah a programme on BBC iPlayer this week called The Impossible Job. It's about the England manager job down through the years, since 1966 when we won the World Cup or something. I don't know, I wasn't even alive back then. And what was interesting was every time we sacked a manager, which was roughly every 2 to 3 years, the FA, the Football Association, would then employ somebody who was the complete opposite to the manager they had before. So we've had a geezer like Terry Venables, then we get someone bland. And then we keep going like that, swapping and swapping and swapping and swapping. And I wonder if in the church, capital C, not just TBC, whether each generation we just react to the Jesus we adopted in the last one. Who do you say I am, says Jesus. I wonder if in 30 years' time, when people look back on us, I wonder if they'll say, well, they didn't mean it, and it wasn't deliberate, but they had a bit of a consumer Christ. A Jesus who was there for them to meet their needs. A Jesus who suited their beliefs, who was a bit woolly around the edge. A Jesus who said, well, you can go to church on Sunday if you want, but not if it's over 25 degrees. Go to the beach then. A Jesus who said, you can pick me up and drop me down when you want. A Jesus who was almighty, but not almighty. A Jesus who we were comfy with. Jesus who was friend, but was he saviour and king? I wonder, and I could be completely wrong. But I do suggest that this consumer Christ is a reaction to the Christ of 30, 40 years ago. The Christ that some of you who are older come and talk with me about. The Christ who was stern. The Christ who never smiled. Who all of his parables were very serious and we never saw the joke in them. The Christ who said you better well go to church twice every Sunday, even if you don't like it. The Christ who said, you're a Baptist, so when you move town, you go to the Baptist church, even if it's dead and dying, because you're a Baptist. I wonder if 30, 40 years ago we had a legalistic Christ, one whose love we earned through our good deeds. And the Christ that we maybe see around the edges now, the consumer Christ, is a reaction to that one. You understand that I speak in extremes, that I know there are shades, and I know that we don't all believe that. But I just wonder when they look back and say, who is Jesus? What their answer would be from our day and age. Who do you say I am? Jesus turns this from a comfy theological chat on a couch around a log fire into a personal question. Who do you say I am? That's the question that Jesus asks us. There are lots of burning theological issues that the church in the world argue about all the time. And I put it to you that most of them are not burning, and a lot of them jolly well aren't theological. They're traditional. They're traditions that we have and we hold dear. And actually Jesus says they're not part of my church and of what I am wanting you to share. They're not burning. They're not theological. And we should cast them to one side. As we read through church history, I think one of the shames we can see is that often the church has majored on the minor issues of our faith, and we've minored on the major issues of our faith. We've majored on the minor. How often have you been in a church meeting and you've heard someone talking, thinking, why are we getting so heated about this? Before I came to this church, I read the church meeting minutes from the late 1960s to the early 1970s, when the church actually moved its building here. They were really quite amusing in places. The things that we felt strongly about, that actually now we'd look back on and say, really? We got heated about that? People left because of that? They won't talk to them because of this? We need to major on the major issues of our faith. And the minor things that you think that I disagree with, can't we hold those lightly so that we hold Jesus tightly? Let's major on the major and let's minor on the minor issues in life. Let's read these books knowing that we're not going to agree with everything that's written in them, but that they will take us to the major issues. And what are the major issues of Jesus? The major issues are that he was before creation as part of the Trinity, that he came and he lived as a fetus in the womb of a teenage girl called Mary, that he was born and that he lived an ordinary life like you and me, a carpenter's son, taking on the business when Joseph, his father, died, that he then, around about the age of 30, decided to go out and tell people about a God who was absolutely amazing and loved them and wanted to bring justice to this earth, that he didn't just say it with his mouth, but he said it by dying on a cross as well, to destroy all of those powers that will try and hold us. And then he rose again 3 days later to say, hey guys, what I did then, it's real. And then he went back to heaven. And when we breathe our last here and breathe our first there, we will be with him like that if we have said yes to him. And one day, and no one knows when, even though some Americans tell us on documentaries that they do know the date and the time, one day Jesus will return and he'll wrap it all up and he'll complete it. They're the majors of our faith. They're the things we should get passionate and heated about in a good way. Not what style sandals did Jesus wear. Well, he must have worn Birkenstocks. Oh no. He would have made his own sandals out of wood because he was a carpenter. They are minor issues. That's not even an issue. I've just made that one up, haven't I? I can imagine a movement starting about it now. We follow the real sandals, Jesus. We refuse your wooden sandal, Jesus. It's quite clear in Malachi chapter 4 that he wore Birkenstocks. Preach it, sister. Who do you say I am? Jesus asked the disciples this as they are in the surrounding villages of Caesarea Philippi. And Jesus asks us the same question as we are in the surrounding villages. It's easy to have the right answer when we're in church on a Sunday morning, sweating like we've not sweated in about 30 years. When is this heat going to end, we're thinking. But Jesus asks us, who do you say I am, in the surrounding villages? When you're at the school gate, when you're at work, when you're in the council chambers, when we're at home with family we don't actually get on with. Jesus asks us that most important of questions in our everyday lives. That's where we answer it. Not just intellectually, but an intellect that moves to our hearts and moves to our feet and our hands and our mouths, so that we make a difference. And God bless you for the differences you are making in council, in church, in schools, in homes, in places of work. The ways that we are seeing lives being transformed because we believe Jesus is the Messiah, the Christ, the Anointed One. When was the Cadillac Ranch built? I said it at the beginning. Can you remember? Anyone? Someone said 60s. Wrong answer. Anyone? Who said 1974? You, man, are on fire today. You've had 2 answers. Well done. Let's give that guy a round of applause. Come on. 1974. I shared that with you 20 minutes ago, and it's faded from your memory already. Everything fades. Can you remember one sermon that you've heard over the years? Maybe a handful, but hardly any. Can you remember a Christian book on all those ones you've read on your shelf? Maybe a handful. Can you remember people that have made a difference to you? Maybe a couple. But everything in life fades, apart from one thing. No, not a thing, a person. Jesus Christ. He does not fade. He does not die. He's done it once and he will never do it again. And he is always with us at your point of need. Where we need him most, Jesus says, I am there with you. Let's focus on him, the one who we are following. Maybe I've made an assumption there. Are you following him? If somebody says to you, who do you say I am? Can you, hand on heart, say, Jesus, in the big picture major stuff, I know who you are. I know you're the Son of God who died on the cross for all of creation to get rid of all of the crud so that we could live in perfect friendship with our Heavenly Father. Let's pray.